Why South Sudan? An Every Village podcast where we answer questions about the world's youngest nation. The question of the day is, what are some mistakes every village has made in the past, and what have you learned from them? Hey everyone, this is Tiana Johnston, the host of this podcast called Why South Sudan? So we have Andrew Brown back in studio.
Hey Tiana.
Welcome. Man, yeah, we've just had so many good reviews about just listening to you share your heart. So we're just going to keep you here.
Well, thanks. And this, if I can jump in, we've already made a mistake on this podcast.
What?
Because you said the question of the day and you asked two questions.
Oh, you're right.
So it was perfect. Already making mistakes.
There we go.
We should make a lot of mistakes on this episode too.
That is true.
You know.
Hey, the good thing about I guess this more leans on us not making mistakes, but we literally do these in one take. It's pretty great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. So
that actually is not a mistake.
Well, no, we make lots of mistakes and just don't go back and correct them.
That is true. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I actually want to start out with a question for you in reference to working for Every Village. So I know you've been here, I was going to say centuries, not really that long. You've been here 16 years, so you've seen a lot of ups and downs and ebbs and flows and so much changing from staff to even just the direction of Every Village going in. I guess kind of going from maybe like every 5 years, would you say like when's your favorite time? Like, I don't know if that's a great question.
Oh,
so like,
good.
Yeah, like which, yeah.
I mean, I have sweet memories of throughout my 16 years at Every Village. I had a period I called my golden years, which was I think 2013, 2014 maybe, where we just had a really fun office dynamic. A lot of fun folks on the team at the time, and I don't know, it was just sweet. We had a good crew. And it's not to say we don't at now or at other times.
I won't take any offense.
But there were a lot of young folks all at the same time. We're not quite as young as we used to be. And so there was a lot of young energy. It was just fun. So anyway, we look back. I look back on that as kind of the golden years. But man, I mean, it always is growing. It's just like a good wine. It matures with age. The other season, of course, that I loved was when I lived in Africa. I mean, that was just amazing, the experiences. And particularly, my relationship with our African team members that I knew of for years from a distance, but really became deep and close with when I moved over there. So those would be two highlights. And then I guess I'm just going to hit all of them. No, this is kind of like Taylor Swift, the eras. But no, my first, I don't know anything about Taylor Swift, so I don't know whether that was the right reference or not. We should ask Ken.
I think it is correct.
But anyway, but I mean, I also just have some fond memories of my very first year at Every Village. It was Aid Sudan then, and just thinking about I can picture the office that we worked in. It was just this little. I didn't have an office. I didn't even have a cubicle. I was kind of like stuffed in the back. It was kind of this like closet without a door. It's kind of like Harry Potter. I don't really know.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. But anyway, I don't know. But like, it was such a joy because, I mean, I came from oil and gas. It was like, I was just so elated to be like doing something totally different and new. And I was it was just, the world was my oyster. I mean, you could do anything. We were learning, we were growing. We were making tons of mistakes in those early years. And it was fun. And so, I don't know, I can picture that, vividly right now. So anyway, there you go. Walk down
awesome.
memory lane.
I know, it's so fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say my favorite, I don't know. My favorite was definitely being in South Sudan for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. But now, definitely. I mean, I know I've said it before on the podcast, before when I worked for Every Village, it was a calling. I was being obedient to the Lord, but now I just so believe in it. I'm just so proud of the work.
Yeah.
And just seeing the South Sudanese, how much they've grown and taken ownership. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's such a good point too, is like the era that I'm in currently is, I mean, I love my work still, and I love my coworkers, but more than ever, I believe in what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And in the past, not that I did believe in what we were doing, but I believed in the potential of what we were doing. and I loved my coworkers. Now I love my coworkers, and I really believe in what we're doing, and
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty special.
Totally. I mean, even y'all's leadership, training that y'all have, retreats every year. I mean, just how much it's grown, and
Yeah,
just seeing the brotherhood between like all the leaders, from Awil and Mavolo, like they're all from different
yeah,
tribes, but they are so close.
yeah,
It's really beautiful.
yeah.
So I know we talked about some highs here, but mistakes are good. Mistakes are what need to happen for you to grow, and that's just even personally, but also professionally. And so I know every village has succeeded very well at that.
Yes, we've succeeded in making mistakes.
Yes, which a lot of nonprofits have. When you work overseas, when you work cross culturally, there's going to be a lot of mistakes. And so, would love to hear your thoughts. Any that you want to share? Any maybe just highlights? You don't have to share all of them, but
Yeah,
if you want to.
no, we'd be here for days and days. Uh, no, I'll just first off and say, if you're not making mistakes, then you're probably not dreaming big enough. Also, if you're not making mistakes, then you're probably a little deluded because you're probably making mistakes and not recognizing it. So I would just say
Like
those,
naive,
yeah,
for
those
sure.
those two things is like we should all be making mistakes because that comes from trying new things and seeking the Lord and just going for it, and you make mistakes along the way. I'm going to start with a really funny one that really has nothing to do with like mistakes that every village made, but this is probably my most humorous personal mistake I've made at every village, so I have to tell this story. Sorry.
Great.
A little aside. Um, I'll try to tell it briefly. We used to have galas at hotels in Houston, and then for a couple of years there, we also had an annual gala in Dallas. And so I remember a year where we were basically just replicating what we'd done in Houston. We went up to Dallas as a team, and we had installed this really cool photo booth wall that I designed and made, and it was just like this huge wall full of radios, solar powered radios. It was awesome. It looked really awesome, but it was a lot of work. Anyway, to take it up to Dallas, we rented a U-Haul trailer, and not the U-Haul truck, but the trailer that you attach. And then I borrowed a friend's truck, and we loaded it up in the trailer and then drove up to Dallas. I had no problems, and I'd never driven a trailer before in my life, but I went from Houston to Dallas. We had the event, had no issues at all. But then I was supposed to bring it back to Houston and drop it off at a coworker's house because she was staying in Dallas for a few days. And I was going to meet her husband at the house, drop the trailer off, and he was going to return it. I don't remember exactly why. And then I had to return the truck. So I got to their house, and the husband wasn't there. He was caught up at work. And I called him, and he said, "Oh, just leave it in the garage, this U-Haul trailer." So I have to back this trailer into their garage. Well, they had a 2-car garage, but they had one of the 2-car garages that had the center column in the middle.
Ooh.
So I open up the garage door, and first off, just backing up a trailer. If you've never done it, it sounds maybe simple. It is not simple. I don't understand. Anyway, everything's opposite. I'm not a bad driver, but I could not figure out for the life of me which way to turn the wheel, and I'd overcompensate. And I was being so careful. I'm not kidding you. I spent probably 15 to 20 minutes just slowly trying to back it up, and then I'd get off. So then I'd pull forward again and then try again. Like, it was ridiculous. Well, I finally think I line it up straight, in the driveway, and I'm like, okay, I can just back up straight. Don't turn the wheel, back up straight into the garage. Well, and I'm using the rear view mirror, and I can see the U-Haul trailer, but I didn't really think about the wheel well. The tires stick out from the trailer wider,
Oh yeah.
and I just didn't see it in the mirror, and so I back up, and I'm not going that fast, but I back straight into that center column of the garage, and I didn't realize what was happening, and so anyway, I smash it pretty solidly, and it bends the frame of the garage door, and I damaged their center column of their house. I feel like an idiot. The trailer is out in the driveway, and then to make things worse, I got out of the truck. I left the truck running. My phone was in the truck. The keys are in the ignition. It's still running, and I get out, and I'm looking at the damage. Well, I realize, okay, what do I do here? I can't close the garage door again because it's like the rail has been bent. So I'm like, but I can't leave their house like open. No one's home. what do I do? So, well, you know how garage doors have handles on the inside of the door. So the only way I couldn't think, but I was like, so I went into the garage and I take the handle with my hands and I just start wrenching it down, and I'm able to like manually pull the door down. Well, I pulled the door all the way down, and then I realized I'm stuck in the garage and the truck's running outside in the driveway. And I'm like, what do I do? Well, thankfully they leave their back door inside their garage open to the house. It's unlocked. But she had told me they had a security system. And I've been to their house before, so I knew that there's a patio door. This is getting long, but it's funny. There's a patio door that I was like, okay, I can. If you enter a house and the security system, like, and you get out again within a few seconds or whatever, it doesn't alert the police. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna run in the house and then run out the back patio doors, like all quickly. So I'm planning all this in my head. And I do that, and I think I get out without the alarm system setting. I don't remember, but then so I'm in their backyard now. And I'm going around to the side to go back to the driveway, and their side gate is locked with a bicycle lock. And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to climb the fence. Well, they have their trash bin is right by there, and it's on wheels. It's one of those push trash bins. So I climb up atop of the trash bin to jump over the fence, and the wheels start spinning, and the trash can falls over, and I just like fall to the ground. At this point, like, I literally just start laughing because I'm like, this is a comedy of errors. This is so ridiculous. I feel like Mr. Bean. Like, I feel like somebody's filming me right now, and everyone's just laughing at me, but nobody was. And so anyway, eventually I get back over, and the truck's still running. And this had been like a 30-minute process probably. The truck's just running in the driveway. Meanwhile, the U-Haul is still there. Anyway, long story short, we had to pay, thousands of dollars to fix our coworker's house, and I'd never driven a trailer again in my life. So,
oh my gosh, that's
a mistake. What I learned from that is don't drive a trailer.
I'm like crying. That's hilarious. I wish I was a neighbor, and part of me thinks I would just laugh at you the whole time. I just imagine you like climbing up on the trash can and then just like keep falling.
My goodness.
Oh my gosh.
And you
Wait,
feel
did
like
the
such
alarm
an
go
idiot. And I felt like such an idiot calling my coworker, and I'm like, guess what I just did to your house? It's like, and everyone was really gracious, but man, you feel
Would
so
it have
stupid.
fit? Like with the wheels?
Yes, it did. It would have fit. I just
didn't.
didn't. I didn't know. Oh my goodness, it was so dumb.
It is very delicate to like turn
Yes.
into reverse. Yes.
Anyway.
Oh my gosh,
So
that's hilarious.
That is a big mistake.
That's a great one.
Anyway, so to the bigger picture of mistakes we've made as an organization, man, I mean, we're working in pioneer type missions. I mean, this is, it's a young nation. And when we started, we were a group of Americans that were taking short-term trips over to South Sudan, dreaming of this nation that wasn't even a nation yet. And
Quick question on that.
Yeah.
So because it wasn't South Sudan, so y'all just flew into Sudan and then just drove south? Or would y'all?
No, I mean, we flew into Entebbe, Uganda, and then we chartered. Same route.
Okay. But you would only stay in the lower
southern
portion.
Sudan, yeah. But technically, I've been to Sudan because it was Sudan when I went there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
My sister and I have a competition of how many countries we've been to, and I count Sudan. So
that's smart. Yeah. I would too.
But the nature of our work over the years, man, we've just made, again, so many mistakes. I'll just try to highlight a few, because again, we could be here for days. Honestly, remember how we did our first testimony podcast and we realized, oh, this is so good. Let's keep doing it. We should do this as well. We should have a mistake podcast.
Yeah, that's true.
Every quarter, we just talk about mistakes we made.
Keeps us humble.
We had a program that was really awesome called the Moses Project. In concept, it was awesome. And it was basically taking South Sudanese refugees in the United States and training them to be missionaries to go back to their home areas of South Sudan and lead oral Bible schools. In concept, it's great. And in practice, we had some really sweet memories and some great successes there. But we also made a lot of mistakes. I would say in those early years, we made tons of mistakes in just cross-cultural communication and expectations setting. So, we're training these South Sudanese guys, and they're been in America for a number of years. In fact, I think they had become American citizens all at that point. So you tend to just assume that you're coming at it from the same direction, but you're not necessarily when you communicate things. So an example there, we sent over one of our Moses Project missionaries Again, their goal was they'd go over for, I don't remember, the first rotation was something like 2 months to launch an oral Bible school and to gather pastors and share the vision and launch this Bible school and do a first few small set of stories. Then they'd come back to the States, get some more training of more Bible stories, then go back over and lead more, and then come back and forth. So it was a rotation program over a period of 3 years. And over that 3-year period, they'd learn, I think, teach 118 Bible stories. It was pretty awesome. Anyway, this one of this Moses Project missionaries we sent over, and when he had fled, he was a lost boy of Sudan. When he had fled, of course, he was single. He was just a kid. Was a refugee, then moved over to the United States, so he was still single. Well, as many South Sudanese want to do, they want to, when they go back for the first time, they want to get married. And so his expectation when he went over was that he would work on getting married. And I think it was communicated that was an expectation. But of course, we assumed, well, he'll be able to do that while, during his spare time, and during the day, he'll be doing his job, right? Well, that's not the way things work in South Sudan, right? I mean, this guy hadn't been back in, a long time, and he's reestablishing those relationships. And then he's trying to raise support for his dowry to buy the cows for, his engagement for his wife. And that process is not easy. It takes time. So he was there for months and literally had not started anything, hadn't done anything. And I remember, and I wasn't leading the program at the time, but I remember the guy who was leading the program. This was the days before there was no cell phone towers at all. So it was only satellite phones, which, a satellite phone is spotty to begin with, but it only works if the person, has the phone turned on. And he didn't have regular access to electricity at all. He was out in the bush. So he kept his phone off most of the time. Of course he should. And he'd only turn it on at a time. So it was hard to get a hold of him. But every once in a while, the guy who was running the program would try to call him and get hold of him or whatever, and eventually it wore to the point where he said, "Hey, if you don't get on this plane to come back home, we're gonna have to leave you in South Sudan. You're fired, and we're gonna have to leave you." Well, that's exactly what happened, and he didn't get on the plane, and it was I feel bad, but I mean I think it was over a year for him that he just ended up staying in South Sudan till he could raise enough money to buy a plane ticket to come back to the United States.
Wow.
And he and I have reconciled, and I've seen him, a number of times over the last few years, and he's a great guy. He's a pastor of a South Sudanese church in Houston now. Great guy. But this was decades, over a decade ago. But like we went in with such different expectations. Mm-hmm. And that's just one story that represents years of having to learn that is, the way Americans think and communicate can be very different from how South Sudanese think and communicate. So cross-cultural communication is such a common one. So I don't know, I'm sure, Tiana, you've got stories from when you lived there as well. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you want to share one or not, but.
Yeah, I know even as you were speaking, kind of what came to mind was, just how, Americans, we operate versus how South Sudanese operate, and just like what we see as acceptable. And like with South Sudanese, respect is a big thing. And so like even with like my language teacher, I got super, super frustrated one day because I was like, I'm saying what you're saying. And I obviously wasn't, because I sound a lot differently. And so I just got frustrated. And so I just like got up and stormed off because I was just so frustrated. Well, obviously was very offended, like so disrespectful for me to do that. And so then for me, the following day, I needed to go and apologize to him and like ask for grace and forgiveness and everything, which was huge. And even that, like, they're not used to people apologizing and even like fessing up to their mistakes of like, hey, like that was not totally out of character. I shouldn't have done that. I was very disrespectful to you. But in that, like, I feel like even with me and you, like, I guess if I would have just got it up and like stormed off, like you probably would have understood that I was frustrated, all that. We probably would have talked through it. But for them, it was just like, it was very, very disrespectful. Yeah.
Man, you've had to apologize. I've had to apologize many times at Every Village. So
yes.
You're exactly right. I've made a lot of mistakes personally. Let's not go there. But I mean, you're right. It's like, man, having the humility to go back and confess and apologize is huge. Mm-hmm. And man, it's not easy, and it's certainly not culturally expected. Or normal. But what I have loved is when because we've been able to walk in mistakes and then in asking for forgiveness, we're seeing more and more of our South Sudanese staff members see the way of Christ in that too.
For sure.
Forgiving and asking for forgiveness, and that's huge. So, yeah, that's a great example. And we could go on and on. But I'll just then cut to a couple more recent ones, or in the last few years. I've talked about this probably at length on other podcasts. So I'll just hit the high level, but and in fact, I think our last episode was about sustainability, but we were making a lot of mistakes as a ministry, centered around project-oriented thinking versus systems-oriented thinking. And so basically, in short, we were raising a bunch of money to drill water wells, but there was no maintenance plan in place. We were, building radio stations and broadcasting via satellite from a distance rather than building local recording studios and employing local staff to produce the content. I mean, just a lot of different things that we were doing that was just kind of a little head scratching, but it was more about projects and getting accomplishments done that we could tell stories and say, look what we've done in South Sudan, rather than focusing on long-term life impact. And that's just a huge mistake. Development is hard work. It's long timeline. You can't rush that, because it's about mindset shift and maturity and growth, and that takes a long time for all of us. And so changing our thought process towards long-term systems-based thinking and raising up local leaders is huge. We, as a ministry, also didn't used to have any vision to raise up South Sudanese leaders with the ministry. I worked for Every Village for over 10 years and never once heard a vision of promoting South Sudanese to lead the ministry. It was an American ministry to serve the South Sudanese. That's a mistake. I mean, it's short-term thinking. And so we had to learn that, maybe the hard way. But we're in such a fruitful place now. It's such an amazing place now, because it wasn't easy to make that shift, to take responsibilities and leadership off of the Americans and hand it over to the South Sudanese. But when it happened, we went through some learning curve and some pain points, but it has continued to be more and more evident that was the right decision. And so, I mean, those are just a couple examples of mistakes we've made organizationally at a high level on our strategy side of things. Obviously, we've got, I think 86 South Sudanese employees now and 6 Americans. We're over 90 employees as an organization. You make mistakes all the time on staffing, and so, we've had that both in the States, we've had that in South Sudan. That's not easy. I think, though, probably one of the worst things you can do, though, is to ignore that mistake and just let it kind of fester. And that's kind of maybe a gross word, but like it can ruin culture. It can ruin morale pretty quickly if you've got somebody in the wrong position for the wrong reason. And so it's not an easy decision, but it's worse to make a mistake in a hiring decision and then refuse to make that a corrective measure to that. And that's a double mistake. And so those are some things that come to mind as a ministry. But the last thing I'll say is just that, man, we serve such a gracious God who truly flourishes in our weakness. Paul was not wrong when he said, "For God's power is made perfect in my weakness." And so, thus, Paul says, "So I boast in my weakness. I rejoice in those challenges." And I would say the same thing. Not that we're trying to make mistakes, but I do rejoice that we make mistakes. I glory in our weakness, because that's when God steps in and is really strong. And you have to remind me this, Tiana. Over the years, I probably shouldn't be doing this, but I'm doing our communications and marketing right now, because we don't have other team members focused on that. And so working on a monthly email. And I'm a pretty good stickler for grammar and spelling, and I'm pretty good at it most of the time. But every once in a while, I'll have made a mistake and haven't proofread it closely enough. And Tiana, you'll point it out, and you're great at pointing those mistakes out. But one thing you always say, what do you say?
Is that the Lord keeps you humble. That's
right. When you make those mistakes, it keeps you humble. And I'm really glad you feed me that nugget of truth in those times, because like my one side of me is just like, why did I do that? But I've embraced that phrase in my head a lot, because I'm just like, and truly in that moment when I realize I made a mistake, like a big public mistake like that, I just thank the Lord and say, "Thank you, God. I'm not enough. I need your help. I make mistakes. thanks for letting me make another mistake to remind me of that,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's the kind of mindset that I have about mistakes, and some are a lot more embarrassing than others, like when you drive a U-Haul in your coworker's garage. Um, but it keeps you humble, and in those some instances it makes you laugh, and a lot of other instances it makes you cry.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not perfect, but we serve a perfect Christ, and
Mm-hmm.
He's so gracious. So
Yes. I was even talking to someone yesterday, just talking about, what does faith look like? And faith is being dependent on the Lord. And I think that is the beauty of mistakes, and that's the beauty of how every village has grown and changed and shifted and all of that, just because we're willing to be led by the Spirit. And, I think it's so good for us to pray, Lord, this is our plan, but is it your will?
mm,
This is what we are trying to accomplish. This is the goal that we're going for. But Lord, is this what you have? And so I think it's so good.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. This is a great topic, and honestly, I mean, maybe we should revisit it again. It's just
Yeah.
like tell funny stories about mistakes. I don't know, but anyway,
We definitely should.
yeah, this is a great one. So.
I'll try to think of more for sure.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, man. Okay, I'll save that one for the next one. Oh, this was really good. Oh, I like this one. All right, good. Well, we will end on that note for sure. Well, thanks for sharing. All right. So the next episode is going to be such a good one. We are going to be having a special guest from South Sudan. Well, technically lives in Uganda, but also South Sudan. So the question of the day is, who is Daniel Lawal, Every Village Country Director? It's going to be good. Stay tuned.